Hello guys, Akshay GH here and welcome to another tutorial. So yeah, before that, once again, Happy New Year to all of you, and this is going to be about the Firebase push notification. So I asked you guys about what should I do first before getting into all of these things, and most of you commented about doing a push notification and revised chat app. So first thing is the push notification over here. So yeah, let's get started. So this is going to be a 4-part series. There will be 4 parts of this series. This is the first one, and we'll be dividing them into like creating the UI, then doing the login and register, then sending the notification and handling the notification. So in this first part, we will do our home page, the login and the register page in Android Studio, and in the next part we will cover the functions for those. So first of all, let's get started and let's create a new project, and I'm going to call it Firebase push notifications, and yeah, let's finish building that. So I am using the SDK 23, and once the project is loaded, I'm going to go to my activity main, remove the text view. Also, I am going to change the constant layout to relative layout. Then I am going to import one background, that is kind of red background that I created for the UI design. And right after that, I am going to change the colors of my whole UI. So in colors, I am in the colors.xml file. I changed those colors to somewhat orangish kind of color. And also for our main activity, the background is going to be that red background gradient that I imported. So our homepage is going to have 3 tabs. One is going to be for profile, then a list of users, and then the notifications tab. So those of whom you were asking to store the notification in Firebase and then user can view them in a page like they do it in Facebook or Instagram, yeah, we'll be doing something like that. We will be storing notifications in Firestore, and then we can display them in the notifications tab. So for the tabs, I am not actually going to use the tab layout, but instead what I wanted to do was I actually wanted a custom design for the tab. So I tried linear layout for this. So for creating a custom design for tabs, and in linear layout, I'm going to add 3 text views, and first one is going to be for profile, then all users and notifications. The width, I will take it as a wrap content because I don't want it to stretch it over to the full page. Also for then let's give them some ID. Also font family, I am going to change a few stuff over here. I am going to add 2 colors in my colors.xml file, one for the text tab light and for the bright one. So light is going to be the one that is not selected, and bright for the one that is actually selected. And let's add some padding and the font, the colors of that as well. So yeah, right after that, I'm going to change the size of the profile tab because that is going to be the first tab that will be opened, and also the color for that. So once that is done, I am going to add a view pager to our page. So view pager is obviously going to hold our fragments. So after adding the view pager, I am going to add 3 fragments. So let's go and create one. So file, new, blank fragment. First one is going to be profile fragment. You make sure that you exclude those 2 fragment factory methods and interface callback. So I'm going to call it profile fragment. Another one is going to be the users fragment, and lastly the notifications fragment. So once we got that, so what I did over here was to give some margin to our relative layout that we have in the fragments, but that didn't work out later. So yeah, I will explain you that later. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the I'm going to initialize those in my main activity. So the profile label, user label, notification label, and our main view pager, which is going to hold all these 3 fragments. So to get those fragments in our view pager, we need a new adapter, and I'm going to call it pager view adapter. Then you just create a new file or new class for that, and this is going to be extend from the fragment pager adapter. So once you do that, you'll get some error, and you need to import 2 methods and a constructor for our page. Also in get count, the total number of the tabs, which is 3 in our case. Then in our get item, I'm going to add a switch statement, and this is going to be for all these 3 tabs. For the first this is going to be the profile fragment. For the second, the users fragment, and this third one is going to be the notifications fragment. And for the default, return null. Now we got some error, and this error is obviously from our fragments because of the wrong import statement. So the import should be Android support v4 app instead of the normal fragment. All right, so you do that in all those three files and the error will be gone. And once that is done, now we can get the or initialize the adapter in our main activity, and you need to pass in get support fragment manager. Then for our main view pager, you just set the adapter as our mpager view adapter, and then let's try to run the app. So what we get over here is very badly and bright looking tabs, but we can scroll through those tabs and you can see that the view pager works pretty fine. All right, so next what I'm going to do is I am going to create a background as a drawable layout file, and this is going to be for our fragment background, and this is just going to be a simple white color background with a border radius of 5, and then I will assign them to my relative layouts. So in all those three fragments you assign over there. And the next step that I'm going to do is for our main pager, I'm going to add on page change listener. So once every time a page is changed, what we are going to do is we are going to also change the tabs. So I'm going to create a new method that is going to be change tabs, and I'll pass the position for them. So the position is going to be the what page you are on after the page is changed. So in our new method, what we are actually going to do is, so if the position is 0, I'm going to change the color of my profile label and the size of that, also for the users label and the notifications label. So if the position is 0, the users and notification labels should be 16 SPS size, and the text should be light, and for the profile label it should be bright and 22 the size. Alright, so for each one what we can do is for position 1 we can change it for the users label, and position 2 we can change it for our notifications label. Then also what we this is not really necessary, but if you really want to implement it, you can add on-click listeners for your labels as well, but that's mostly you should do for buttons, not for labels. But here's an example how you can do it. You just add an on-click listener for your label, and once you click on that profile label, our main pages should set the current item to 0. That is the first page in the pager. All right, so for the users label you can set it for 1, and for the notification label you can set it to 2. So that way you can scroll through those tabs without even without even swiping left or right. You can click on those tabs to scroll through. And the thing over here is what I'm going to change first is, instead of that relative layout directly over here, I am going to add a frame layout that will surround the relative layout, so that we should be able to get that kind of margin from the left and right from all sides of our relative layout. So I'm going to give the relative layout a margin of 15 dp and the frame layout margin of 0, and then we can change the background from frame layout to the relative layout so that it looks something like that. We get a margin from all of the sides. So let's try to run the app, and here you can see that this works pretty fine. We got our custom tabs without doing much of a work, but also the colors look too much bright, so we actually need to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export one more background, and this background I have exported it already, so this is going to be the another one. So I just exported in safer side, so if one color does not look good, I should change it to the other one. And yeah, this totally worked out. Also, according to this, I am going to change the color of the our colors.xml file so that everything matches for our primary color, primary dark, and stuff like that. So yeah, as you can see that the colors are changed and everything looks pretty fine. We can run the app once again, and this looks pretty great, and this is exactly how we want it for our tabs. These are just awesome looking tabs that we created, totally custom. All right, so the other two UIs that we actually need in our app is going to be a login page and a register page. So let's create two new activity for a login page, and another one is going to be for register. All right, let's add a few elements to our login page. I'm going to change the layout to relative layout, assign a background to that which we imported, and let's add some text, the text label welcome to TVAC notification app, and give it some font size and color and stuff like that, margin from all sides so that it looks nice. Also, I am going to add two edit text, for one for email, one for password, and for the background of input I am going to create a new drawable resource file as a shape of background white and corners of 30 dp. Then we just assign those background to our edit text, and let's add some margin from all the sides and also padding for all the sides. And yeah, so once you do that, after adding the padding and margin, I am going to add a button that is going to be for our login button, and the background should the input background should work for it, because this is also going to be a white button, so nothing much change. But for the font color, I'm going to change it to the primary dark color, which looks pretty nice, not the dark but primary color. Then for the other button, which is going to be for our send to register page, this I am going to create a new file for this new drawable resource file, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a stroke of white color with width 1 and 30 dp as radius, so that this doesn't have a background but just a border, so that it looks transparent and really nice looking. So we can then change the text color and the text size to make it look nice. Let's add some IDs to these, and for a temporary viewing purpose, what I'm going to do is in our main activity.java file, I'm going to create an intent that actually sends us directly to the login page instead of opening a main page first, because we don't have any functions yet and we actually want to preview the login page. So I just created an intent to our login activity from the main activity. All right, so when we try to run it, it looks pretty nice, and as you can see that the login page looks really good. So what I did over here is I created one more page, which is the register page. Everything is pretty same, and just a few things added. One is an image button to select the profile pic of the user. Another thing that I added was the name field, so that user should be able to add a name before the account is even created, and also he can select a profile image for his account. All right, so this all looks pretty nice. And for our login page, what I'm going to do is I am going to initialize all the items that we have: the email, password field, login button, register page button, and you just initialize them over here. And what I am going to do for our register page button, I'm going to set an Onclicklistener, so that once a user clicks on the register page button, it should take us to the register page. So, and I am going to do the same for our register page. I will import or initialize all the elements that we have: the text fields, image button, the normal button, and the login page button. All right, so we initialize them over in the register activity. And for our register page button, what I'm going to do is, instead of creating an intent, what an intent will do is it will just simply take us back to the login page, but instead of taking us back, it will just create a new intent or a new page for that. Over if you click on register page button, it will take you to the register page. Then you click on login page, it will take you login page, but it will create a new intent over there. So then you have to press back button 2 times to go back to the initial page. So instead of going back over there in our login page intent, what we are going to do in our register page is simply, instead of those intent, I am going to type in finish. So that will be it. So this should work pretty fine. Also, what I'm going to do is I am going to import my Firebase project into this. So we can go to the tools and select Firebase, and for authentication section, yes, connect to Firebase, add Firebase authentication to your app. And once all these are done, these are pretty simple steps that you all know and worked with them like a lot of time. So yeah, once these are added, let's go to our main activity, and instead of that normal intent, what we are going to do is we are going to add Firebase Auth. So this is going to check whether the user is logged in or not. So Firebase Auth is going to be equal to Firebase Auth.getInstance, and then in our onStart method, what we are going to do is I'm going to override an onStart method over here, and This is going to just simply check Firebase user. This is going to be the current user from mauth.getCurrentUser. So if current user is null, that means the user is not logged in. We should go to the login page. So I'm going to create a method that is going to be called send to login, and in that we are going to create a login intent that will send us to the login page. And after that start activity login intent, all you need to do is add in finish, and that will make sure that you can't come back to the main page without logging in. So yeah, let's try to run the app and let's see what we got in our first part of the tutorial. And as you can see that it takes us directly to the login page, and it looks pretty nice. And yeah, this is it for this part, and I'll be see you guys in the next part. Hello guys, Akshay here, and welcome to another part. Now this is going to be where we do our login and registration function. So before we begin, there is a little announcement to make. So for those of you who are still asking about Library Chat, the rest of it will be covered along with the, in the refined chat app that we are going to do soon, and it won't take much time. It will be really like in next week. I'll try to do that. Anyways, so if you guys want to support us, you can donate us at PayPal or by becoming a Patreon, and now our Indian users can also Paytm us. The link for QR code will be in description, and let's get started. So in previous part, what we did was we created the the tab layout and the login and registration page. So in this part we are actually going to let the user register an account. So for that, what we are going to do is I am going to use actually a circular image view instead of using an image view with a circle image, because once a user starts uploading, we actually need to have a circular image view for that square image to convert into the circle image. All right, so what I'm going to do, I am going to use this library that is called circle image view. So I am going to copy this dependency and paste it in our Gradle file. Alright, so once we do that, we sync it and it will be imported in our project. So it's kind of really easy to change. What I'm going to do is I am going to change the image button to circle image view, because we can't then create a circle image button, and that will like really take a lot of time. So we are going to use the circle image view as a button as well. So this won't show us the image for the first time, so we actually need to, instead of the source compat, we actually need to use the source for this. So I am going to use that. Also, let's go back to our register activity and change the circle image view, this image button to circle image view. All right, then the next step is I am going to add an on-click listener for our image button, which is the circle image view actually. So we do that, and in our on-click listener we need an intent for gallery to pick images. So we just start a new intent, and that intent will be of type image and set action to action get content. So this will be a create chooser for the result, and a pick image constant variable with the value of any value you want. So in this case I'm going to assign it 1. Alright, so in our on create result method, we are going to create an if statement that will check for the request code. So if the request code is pick image, that is the request code that we have for our intent. So if that is the code, that means we are coming back from that intent, and then we need, obviously we are going to store an image URI in a string. So I am going to create let's try to create a URI instead of string. So I am going to create a URI image. URI going to be the name, and in our on create I am going to assign a null value to it. So in the on activity result method we will then assign the value to our image URI. So this will be from the data.get data, simple as that. Also I am going to assign the image button, we are going to assign that image URI as set image URI, so that once a user selects the file, it can show us that in the image view. So let's try to run the app, and you're gonna see that once we select the image, we see it in our image view. All right, pretty neat. So next step is we are going to add an on-click listener for our register button. So once a user clicks on the register button, what we should do is, obviously we need to create an account, but this is going to be like the really lengthiest process of this page. The only suggestion that I would give you before starting this out is to, instead of selecting an image or a name for a user on the sign up activity, what you should do is you should create a different account setup activity instead of doing all these things in the register activity itself. So that would be a suggestion, but for the sake of time, we are going to do all the things in just a single activity. So what we are going to do is I'm going to create an if statement that'll check if the image URI equals null. So this is a case that you can apply, but we are not going to do that to save the time. So if the image URI is null, simply start logging in. If not, then upload the image, then log in, and then store the image URI in the login and stuff like that. So instead of doing all that stuff, what we are going to do is we're not going to actually allow the user to log in without an image. So it's kind of like a hack, but not a really good solution for a final app. This is just for our own personal app. You are free to add your own functionality to your own app. All right, so in our if statement, what we are going to do is we're going to retrieve the data of the name and email and the password field from those fields using the get text to string. All right, so if any of those are empty, we should not proceed. So we are going to check that using the text utils dot is empty. So we need to make sure that none of those fields are empty, only then we can proceed. All right, so first step, once all these things are verified, first step is going to be our what do you call it, Firebase Storage. We need to import the Firebase Storage to our app. All right, Firebase Storage will be used to store the image of the user. All right, so let's initialize those. So first of all, creating the storage reference, and this is going to be Firebase Storage dot get instance dot get reference. All right, and also .child images. This is going to be the directory where we are actually going to store our images to. All right, so for that we have created an directory. All right, so next is going to be our Auth, the Firebase Auth. We are going to create that. Also our Firestore. So for that we actually need to add the dependency. So I'm going to go to my docs section, and in the docs, let's go to Firebase Firestore, Cloud Firestore, and let's copy that dependency and paste it in our build.gradle file. Now once you paste that up, you may need to change the version of your all these three to match up. So since the Firestore is 11.8.0, I am going to change the Firebase Auth and Firebase Storage to the same version to match with it, or else you'll just simply get an error. Alright, so once this is synced, the next step is we are going to initialize all these three things. So for our storage is already initialized, Auth is going to be the Firebase Auth get instance, and also Firebase Firestore. So we need these three things for our registration process, because the image should be stored in storage, the user should be created in the authentication, and the data should be stored in the Firestore. So these are the three things that are required. So first is going to be the creating the user. So this is going to be the first step. So mauth.create user with email and password, and we are going to then add an Onclicklistener. So this will check if the task is successful or not. So if the task is not successful, we're just gonna add an toast. So that is going to be like task.getException.getMessage. Simply show the error as a toast, and I would advise you to add your own error handling stuff. So you can totally do that over here. And if not, if it is successful, so here's the thing I want to mention. If you are creating a final app, I would advise you to send the user to another activity over here that'll have the select an image, or select a name, select state, or add a status, those kind of things. So that should be a different activity, but since for the time save, I am going to add all these things in the same activity, so we are proceeding something like this. Now this is not advised for a final app, but this will work pretty much like 90% of the time. But if you want it to make it like 100% of the time, if you want to make it work 100% time, then you may need to add an additional account setup activity. So once you start creating an account over here, if the user accidentally quits the app, the process will be cancelled, but the account is still created. Remember, there are multiple methods going on in between each other, but one thing that will be done will be the creation of account. So like if the image is uploading and you close the app, the account will be created but image won't be uploaded, and also the name won't be stored. So for that, what you need to do is, like, if the user then revisits the app in the main activity, you can check that if this user exists in the database, then okay, or else let's send him to the account setup page, something like that. That is another solution that you can do, but let's continue over here. So if the task is successful, user ID is going to be equal to the mauth.get current user get UID. So why we need a user ID is obviously to store the image and the data in our Firestore. So first of all, let's create a storage reference, and this is going to be the mstorage.child, I mean in the images directory, and this is going to be with the name of the user ID.jpg. So the image name is going to be as the user ID. All right, so once that is done, user profile, the storage reference, which is .put file, here we pass in the image URI, and then add an Onclicklistener. So this is going to check if the image is uploaded or not. So if the task is successful, then we add something else. Same thing, we need to handle the error. So what I'm going to do over here, instead of just simply naming it a task, I'm going to change it to upload task. And so if the task is successful now, then what we are going to do is, this time we are going to start adding the data to our database. Now here you can see that this method is just getting complicated. So that is why I was telling you to create another activity for this. But here we go. So mfirestore.collections, this is going to be where we are going to store all of the users. So this is going to be the collection called users. Inside that, each user will have their own document. So this document will be called user ID. Obviously this will be from the user ID. So each time a user creates an account, it will create a new document named with that user. Right, inside that we will store a map with the key of string and type object. All right, so this is going to be a new hash map. I'm going to call it user map. So user map dot put, and then we can just simply type in name, and this will be the name and image. Here we can just get the download URI of the image that we just uploaded. So to get that, we can just say string download URI upload task dot get result dot get download URI. So that way you can get the download URI, and to convert it to string, we just simply add toString to that. All right, so for now we are going to store those two things. Later on we have to store one or two more things in that. So let's add an on set user map dot set on, or sorry, add on success listener. So this will be an on success listener. Also I would advise you to add the on failure listener as well. So here we are going to send, if this is successful, we are going to send the user to main activity. So for that, I'm going to create a new method. This is going to be send to main. So let's create method. In this method, we are going to send the user to main activity. So simply an intent from our register activity to the main activity, and simply add a finish so that user won't be able to come back to this page. All right. Also, this won't work right now because there are a few things that are left. And if you go to let's go back to our console, and in the database, first thing is, in the authentication section, in the sign in method, make sure that the email and password authentication are enabled. All right, then in our database storage, the cloud Firestore, we need to change a few rules. So by default, you need to make sure that you start this in a locked mode, and without this won't be working. So you just go to the rules and you type in if auth. So we actually need to change it later. So this is going to be actually if request.auth is not equal to null. So instead of just typing in auth not equal to null, you type in request.auth not equal to null. So those two things you need to make sure that you add before starting the app. All right. One more thing, this is going to be a progress bar. We need a progress bar for our app to know that the process is still going, because this is a lengthy process, and we don't want the user to just keep tapping the button again and again. You also can disable the button, but is up to you. The app user experience is up to you. We are just going to skip a few things. So this is going to be a progress bar horizontal progress bar, and what we are going to do is we are going to include this in our register activity, and you just add the find view by ID. Also in the XML file, what we are actually going to do is you need to add one thing, that is going to be the indeterminate to true. So that means this won't have an actual progress, this will just be like a simple loading progress, so it will just go with the loop, right? So once we start, hit the wedge button, and if the image URI is not null, set the visibility of this progress to visible. By default in the XML file we will set it to invisible. Alright, so what we are going to do is whenever we get any error like we have in the toast, we make it invisible, and also when we finish the task successfully, so all that time we are going to just make it invisible. Alright, so this should be simple. Let's try to run and let's hope that we don't get any error. But I bet most of you guys will get an error over here if you skip like anything, like even a single word. If you misspell or like forget to include, you are just going to get a really lengthy error. So I would advise you to check your code like 10 times before commenting out the error, because most of the time users don't even like message me, they just simply start commenting. All right, though I cannot reply to all of you guys, but I try to reply as many as possible. All right, so we changed the rule in our Firestore, that is to request.auth. all right, so let's try to run the app and let's see what happens. So once our app is running, here you can see that the progress is pretty neat. We got our user, let's type in, let's hit the send button, and as you can see the progress pops up and we got ourselves a new account. So let's go to our database. So in the database we got the user, we got it in the storage, the image, everything is here. So we have successfully added the register function, which is like 90% success rate. Like this will have a 100% success rate only if we need to include user setup activity later on, but that's not for this app. All right, so next thing is the logout. So without that we cannot proceed. So I'm going to go to my fragment, the profile fragment. Let's delete the normal text view. Let's add a button over here, and we are going to add a background for it. So I'm going to create a new drawable file with the background color of primary and 30 dp as the corner radius. We assign that background to this button, we add an ID, we type some text, we change the color of the text, we change the font family, we change the font color, and everything like that, right? So once we add this button, let's go to our profile fragment.java file and let's start coding. So first thing first, over here as you can see that we are going to include the button and also the Firebase Auth at the top. So in our own create view, instead of just returning the whole inflator over here, what we are going to do is we're going to set this into a view. This will be called a view, or whatever you call it. This will be view in our case. Then at the bottom you just simply type in return view. It's the same code, but it will allow us to function in between that. So for our mlogout button, view.findView by ID. So view is actually the view that we are actually using over here. I hope I'm not confusing you guys. So auth is going to be equal to Firebase Auth.get instance. For the mlogout button, we're going to set an Onclicklistener, and that will just simply sign out the user. Also, we will create an intent that will actually send us to the main activity. All right, so let's do that. What we are going to do is intent login intent. This will be from container.get context, because this is a fragment, so we obviously need a parent view group from that to get the context from. Then the login activity is going to be where we actually want to send the user to. All right, let's run the app. So our login feature works pretty fine as well. So this is pretty neat, pretty good, and this is actually what we wanted. So we got ourselves a register page and a logout button as well on our main page. Lastly, we need the login feature. So I'm going to skip ahead a few steps and I'll show you directly what our login looks like. So here you can see that in our login page, what I have done is simply initialize all those items or create those items over here with the progress bar. I have added the onStart method that will check if the current user is logged in or not. So you might want to do that for the register activity as well. All right, then we just simply initialize them in our own create, and what we do is I have added the set Onclicklistener for our login button. That will then get the email and password from those fields, and then it will check if any of those are not empty. Then we just do mauth.signin with email and password, and we got ourselves a non-complete listener with the progress bar. It's not really complicated. It's actually the most simplest if you have completed the create account. This is actually pretty simple for you guys. All right, so lastly, if the task is successful, we just send the user to the main activity. So this is going to be the send to main method that we have ourselves over here. So yep, that will be it. Let's try to run the app and let's see what we got. So we got ourselves a really nice app. We log in and it looks pretty nice over here. So let's try to log out and let's create a new account. So we can type in a few details. So this will be the Allison's account. We don't know who he is, but Allison is the one name that we have. And there we have it. We got ourselves a new account, and we can also check through the tabs. So that was it for the second part, and in the next part hopefully we can start working with sending the notifications, because if the part doesn't get lengthy too much. But let's try to finish this as soon as possible. And for those who are asking about the Lapid chat continuously, yes, we will be doing that. Don't worry about that, guys. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Hello guys, AkshayGH here and welcome back. This is the third part, and here what we are going to do is we are actually going to try to send notification to a user, though the other user may not yet receive the notification. This process is kind of really lengthy for a single video, so we're gonna try to fast forward a little bit so that we could fit so much content in a single video. All right, so before we get started, as always, you guys can support us at PayPal or by becoming a Patreon, and our Indian viewers can also Paytm us. So the link will be in description, and you guys can check that out to support us. Anyways, so let's get started with our app over here. All right, so here we left off in the last part. So we got ourselves a little logout button on our users tab. Sorry, the profile tab over here. So what we are going to do now is we are actually going to try to display the data of the user in that profile tab. So here, as you can see that in our Firebase console, we got ourselves 3 users. So what we are going to do is we are going to try to show that over here. So the current user which is logged in right now. So in our relative layout, we're going to include a circular image view which we just imported in the previous part. All right, so here we will assign it where the default image, we will place it according to the requirement, then also a text view that will hold the name of the user. So we include all that according to your requirement, and then in our profile fragment, I am going to initialize both of the circular image view and the profile name view as well. So initialize that. As it is a fragment, you need to use that view to get the IDs and to initialize those items over here. So once you do with the both of these, what you can now do is we can now run a query with Firebase Firestore to get the data for the user. So since we know the ID of the user, which is ourselves, we can get the ID. So now we can get the other details of that user as well. So I'm going to create the Firebase Firestore variable, and we're going to initialize that right under our mauth. Once that is done, we are going to create a member variable named user ID. So this will be used to store the user ID so that we could be able to use it anywhere in our page as we want. So to get the ID, all you need to do is mauth.getCurrentUser.getUID. Now to get content from that ID, we need to actually retrieve the document of that ID from our Firestore. So to do that, we're just simply going to type in mfirestore.collection users, and inside the document that we want to get is the user ID that we currently are logged in, .get.add success listener, and you can then get the ID over here as a string, sorry, the username. So to get the username, all you need to do is document snapshot.get string, which is the snapshot is over here, the success result that you got, and the name is the key that you provide in the Firestore database. So that way we get the username, same way we can get the user image as well. So once we get both of these as string, now we can display the name of the user. So what I'm going to do is mprofile name dot set text to the username. So that way we can get the username right over there. So now we try to run our app and let's see what we get. So our app seems pretty fine. If we scroll through a tab, we can get back, the name is displayed. But if we go to the third tab and come back, it will show you that loading text first and then the username. So the issue here over here is obviously with our view pager. So for that, what you need to do is you need to go back to our adapter, sorry, the main activity there where we have our adapter or the main pager. So for our main pager, currently the screen page limit, off screen page limit is set to 1, which is default value. But with the latest version of view pager, now the fragments, we can set the limit to whatever value you want. So to change that, you need to just simply type in main pager dot set off screen page limit to 2. So that means currently the one page that is also included, then we can have 2 more off screen view pager pages to get the data synced, to keep the data synced over there. Alright, so that will solve the issue. Now the next thing is to include the image. Now for image, we are going to use the glide library. So many of you may already know how to use this. And first step is copy the Maven Central and the Google, and you need to paste in your project level build Gradle files. So you can see right over here how to include that. Then next step goes to including both of the dependencies. Now here you can see that the current version of glide library is 4.4.0, but we cannot actually use that, and the reason over here is that actually requires the latest support version. So I'm going to tell you. So we have current version 4.0.0 included over here in our Gradle file. So let's go ahead and let's check the versions, the requirements of glide over here. So as it says that the minimum SDK version is required 14, which it meets, our current app meets. Compile SDK is also 26, so we don't have to worry about that. But our support version is 26.1.0. Now the issue lies over here. If we want to, we can include the latest support version, but then we have to change the support version for other libraries as well. So one simple solution for that we came up with is to use the lower version of glide library instead of increasing all the support versions for rest of the libraries. So we included the version 4.0.0 for our glide library. Now what we can do is to set the image from the URL to an image view. We just simply type in glide.with. Here you need to pass in the context. So our context is container.getContext. Obviously you need to pass through that. .load, this here you need to pass in the URL. .into, here you need to pass in the image view that you want to load the image into. So once you do that, this will load the image, but many of you guys may also want to include the placeholder. So for placeholder, what you can do is by default, if you go with version 4.4.0, you will get a direct option to add a placeholder in your glide statement with glide app. But with the older version, what we need to do is we need to add a request option. So I'm going to call this as placeholder option. This is going to be a new request option. So we type in placeholder option dot placeholder, and here you need to pass in the ID or the drawable file of your image that you actually want as a placeholder. So in our case, we have that in our mipmap folder with the name of default image. So what you can then do is right after your context, you can then type in set default request options, and then you just simply pass in the placeholder option. So that way you just have added a placeholder into your using the glide library with the older version. So let's try to run the app and let's see what we get over here. So once the app is loaded, we get both the image and the name, and also you can see that even if we scroll through any of the tabs, everything works pretty fine. So that is exactly what we wanted. So this took a little bit of time, but that's okay. So next step over here is getting the data of all the users and displaying them as a list so that we can then send notification by selecting any of the user that we want. So yes, let's do that. Alright, so now for the process of retrieving all the users and showing them into a list. Here you can see that we need a recycler view for that. So we have added the dependency already. So implementation recycler view v24 7 matching with the support library. So then what we do is in our users fragment, you go and include a recycler view. Now here's the thing, I am going to fast forward this section a lot because of time consumption. We are already taking too much time into creating this kind of stuff, and I just created a few days back 3 videos about how to retrieve data from Firebase Firestore, and you will get exactly same explanation in detail in those videos. So I am going to fast forward this section over here. So if you want to check those out in detail, you can go ahead and check those out in the link in description. So I make my recycler view full width, then we just initialize that in our users fragment. Also, you just create a view for your inflator so that you have your data to be initialized over here. So what we do next is we need a model class, just like we do every time. I'm going to call it users to get the whole list. Here you need to pass in the key. For now we have just stored the name and the image key. So we need constructor for both of these, getters and setters, and an empty constructor for our users class. Once we do that, now we need to proceed with creating an adapter for our recycler view. So creating an adapter is actually kind of an easy process. Also, this is also explained in those videos. So you just simply create an adapter with any name you want, extends recycler view adapter, and then you pass in your view holder, which is going to be users recycler adapter dot view holder. So we create a class named view holder, just like we provided in the above line, and after that you just start implementing the methods and the constructor for our view holder. Pretty simple task, but here what we need to do is in our users fragment we are going to create a list of type users. This is the object that you created, the model class that we have. All right, this will be a new empty array list, so the data will be stored inside this. So what we are going to do is in our users recycler adapter, we are actually going to retrieve the list as a parameter in the constructor. So we will receive it from the page users fragment, and we will then set this page's current user list to that list that we received. Then for our get item count, simply just type in users list dot size. This will get the size of the total list and will automatically assign it to the recycler view. Then we need a resource file for a single list item. So I'm going to create that list item as a relative layout. We place a circular image view for the profile pic and a text view for the name of the user. So it's not so difficult to do, as we have already done this many times. So yeah, let's just skip this step over here about the UI creation. And one thing you need to make sure is the relative layout of your single list item should be set to wrap content, or else the single list item will take the whole page as a size for it. So in our own create view holder in the view, we are actually going to start inflating that single list item in our recycler view adapter. So for that you just type in layout inflator, and here you pass in the context, which will be from our parent .get context inflate user list item and root attached to root to false. Also, you just simply return the view holder view. Then in our view holder, we can initialize our items, the single list items that we have. One is the circular image view and the name view. So after initializing those items, we can then use them in our own bind view holder to assign the data to those. So assigning data is again very simple process. So we get the view from our holder, which is holder in this case. So holder.username view.setText. Here we need to actually get the value from the list. So to get the value from list, you just type in users list.get, pass in the position. So it will take the position where you want the data to get from, and then just pass in the method, which is the get name. Same thing goes for the image, but here we need to actually apply an image from a resource, or actually a link as a string that we have. So to apply that, again we need to use the glide library. So same thing we will do right over here, which is circular image view is the image view that we will have, which is from the view holder.image view. Then for the context, we need to actually get the context from our parent activity. So we do that over here in the constructor. Also create a variable to get the context from, and then we can pass in the context in our glide library function. Then you just simply load the image into our users image view, and we should be good to go. Now let's move to our users fragment and let's start initializing things. First is the recycler view adapter and the recycler view itself. So we initialize those items in our own create view. Not much difficult to do. It's pretty simple process, same as we do like always. So we initialize our list item as well. Then we set has fixed size to our list item, also set a layout manager as a new linear layout manager, and here we need to actually get the context, which will be from the container.getContext. Also for our recycler view adapter, the context should be also from the container. All right, then what we need to do is simply set the adapter that we created to our recycler view. Very simple process to do. Now we actually need to get the data from the Firebase so that we can actually display it in our recycler view. So we initialize Firestore over here using Firestore as get instance right over there. Now there are two ways to do this thing. One is in onStart and another one is onCreate. So we're going to take a look at the onStart method because there is a little bit of problem that you may get, and I can tell you how to solve it before you even get it. So you type in collections, users, and add snapshot listener. Now as I told you before, add snapshot listener is registered to your activity. So this is real time. Even if you destroy the activity, this will always be working in the background. So there will be a little bit of complications, but we will check that out. So as for now, we will check for the document change if the data is added. So we will check that and we will display it as over here. So we get the user data and we store it to the object users that we created right over here. Once we do that, we then add that data to our users list, and simply we just refresh our recycler view adapter for notify data set change. So that was pretty simple. Now if you run the app, and here you can see that everything works pretty fine, nothing much of a complication. But let's try to log out our app, and we do that right over here, and as soon as we click on the logout button, it logs us out, but in a second we get an error. Now this error is obviously because of our Firestore add snapshot listener. Now the activity that we have created users fragment, the fragment that we have may get destroyed while logging out, but the event is still registered to it. Even if this is not completely destroyed, we need to actually unregister the event from the users fragment so that we don't get an error if we go back to our login page. So to do that, it's quite simple. You need to actually simply pass in the activity. So you just type in get activity. So in this case, for fragment, we need to pass in get activity, but if you have your complete activity, then you just simply type in your activity name .this as a context. So our app is running. Let's try to log in now. This problem should be solved, and let's log in, add the password, and hit the login button. Once we do that, we get the progress bar and we get to our profile page. Everything loads up pretty fine, and we can now scroll through the pages. Let's try to log out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new account instead of going back to the previous one. So you can see that even though we logged out, we don't get any errors. That means we have solved that previous error. So let's do the logout function the account create function over here. So once we fill that up, create new account, it takes us to a new account. Pretty nice. Alright, so next thing is we need to have a on-click listener for our item. So once a user clicks on that, we need obviously a user ID for that. And as explained in our Firestore tutorial about how to get data, getting the user ID is not so difficult. You just need to create an extension class for our model class, then you add that to our model class, and then you can pass in the ID with your object, the complete object. So we just pass in the ID, and then in our onBind view holder, we can get the ID from our users list, get position.getUserID. So getting the ID was pretty simple to do. Once again, I will advise you, if you are watching this for the first time, I will advise you to watch the detailed how to get a complete list from Firebase Firestore to your recycler view in detail in the links in description. So you go ahead and check those out. Anyways, after that, we just set an on-click listener for our items. So holder.mview is representing the complete view for our single list item. So if you pass in the username view instead of mview, then you need to tap on the username instead of the complete view. So that will be a different case. So you can opt that out, but totally is up to you how you want to create your app. Now for our send notification activity, we actually need a new activity. So we are going to create one. I'm going to call it send activity actually. And here what we actually want to do is a relative layout should work, and I'm going to include a text view that will display the ID of the user once we press or go to that activity. So this will be ID text view. Let's initialize over here first. Now to get once we send the user to this page, we actually want to pass in the ID of that user along with it. So let's create an intent in our users recycler view. So that intent is going to be called send intent, and we pass in the context and the send activity, which is where we want to send the user to. Also, we cannot directly access the start activity as this is a fragment that we are working on, so we need to pass in the context dot start activity, then you can add the intent over there. Now we want to pass in the user ID with this, so what we do is we just add a put extra for our intent, and for the key I'm going to call it user ID, and we will pass in the user ID with it that we created. So once we send the user ID, we can receive that in our send activity as user ID. So we will create a string variable as a member variable to get the user ID from the intent. So to do that, simply type in get intent dot get string extra, and you pass in the key that you assigned to it in the previous activity. Alright, then we simply type in user ID view, which is the view for our user ID, and you set text to the ID that we just received over here. Alright, let's try to run the app and let's see what we get. And then what we can do is in our all users, so we got ourselves a page, and here we have 4 lists of users. So we tap on one of these, and as you can see that it will take us to a new page with the ID that is assigned to it. So our process was pretty simple and pretty good. Nothing to worry about that in this one. We got ourselves a users list. We can now send a user to other page to from that list, which is pretty fine. Now this is time where we try to send a notification to a user. Now sending a notification is a really complicated process. Now in this part we will only be able to cover 20% of it. That's it. We will go in the next part obviously. So to send notification, what we actually are going to do is we are actually going to store notification in Firebase Firestore first, and once it is stored over there, then we are going to use the cloud functions to push that to the Android device or iOS device if you are running any. The process seems pretty simple, but it is a little bit complicated, but if you go with it, you will understand in a little bit of time. Anyways, so let's get started. Now first thing first, to obviously avoid our list from repeating again and again, if you go back from that activity, you need to actually pass in the, users list dot clear. Now this is because if you try to load your try to load your new activity, you will just, if you go back to the list, it will just add those items again in the list, and you don't want to do that. So to avoid that, you add users list dot clear over here. Now, so for the sending notification part, what we are going to do is in our activity send, I'm going to add a few elements. Now those elements are going to be used for our viewing purpose and for notification sending purpose. First is obviously going to be a text view that will simply display who we are sending the notification to. Then we need an edit text and a button. So edit text is where you type in some message for the user that you want to send him to, and for the button, it is actually a simple button that we will click on it to send notification. Alright, pretty neat. The design part will be skipped as always. And once done, as you can see that we got ourselves a very simple and a clean UI over here with some great IDs that are assigned to those. So let's initialize all of these in our send activity. After assigning everything, now we set an Onclicklistener for our send button, and then what we do is we retrieve the data from our edit text, the message view. So we store that in a string called message, and then we check with the text utils. If the string is not empty, only then we should be able to proceed with it. Then what we are going to do, we are going to initialize our Firebase Firestore. Now here we start doing a little bit of stuff. So we actually want to store the notification to a user inside his document. So what we are going to do is each user will have their own collection of notifications with the list of documents that will contain notifications, if you are understanding it a little bit. So it will be something like this. The users collection have a list of users as a document. All right, then each user will have a collection name called notification, which will have notifications as list as documents. All right, hopefully if you are getting it, but don't worry, with the process you will get it. So to do that, you just simply type in Firestore, and what we are going to do is .collections .users, and .collections, you pass in the users, which is the collection name. Inside that, where we actually want to send notification to is obviously the user ID that we have on this page. So we set it to the document over here, and then we actually need a map for setting the data. So a map is going to be great to set the data to it. So we'll create a map with the type key type string, value type object. We will call it notification message. This will be a new hash map. We'll put some data to it. So first is going to be message, which is going to be the message obviously which you typed. Next is going to be, we will store the ID who the user is sending this message, and obviously the person who will receive should know who sent him the message obviously. So for that we need the current ID of the user. So we type in mcurrent ID, we create a member variable for that, and this is going to be from our Firebase Auth. Since we don't need auth anywhere in this page, so we can simply type in Firebase Auth.getInstance getUID, simple as that. Alright, then we just simply add it to put and from mcurrent user ID. So now what we are going to do is, where we are actually going to store is inside the document we need another collection. The collection will be called notification. Then we will add our object. Now this will make it a lot complicated. So to avoid the complications, what you can actually do is you can add all those in a single collection. So how to do that is, you just type in users / the muser ID, document ID obviously, then / notifications, the collection. So once you start typing it something like this, the Firestore will automatically recognize the first object, which is users, is a collection. Second one is a document. Third is a collection. If you pass in fourth, it will automatically recognize it as a document. So everything goes like this in an alternative way: the collection, document, collection, document, and so on. So in our collection notification, here we are going to add the map, which is the notification message. Then we add our own success listener, and we add a toast. Also we will add a progress bar, just like we do it for our login and the register page, and initially indeterminate visibility to invisible. We initialize that progress bar in our send activity, and then once we tap the button, the visibility should be visible now, and once the message is sent, it should be invisible. Then also in our add-on failure listener, if we get an error, this should be invisible. So get the error is pretty neat. You can just simply pass in the exception.getMessage. Also, if the message is sent, we just want to set the edit text to a blank text. All right, now before we finish off, what we need to do is, in our send to the user ID view, the top label that we have, we still are displaying the user ID. So to change that from the ID to the name of the user whom we are sending the notification to, what we can do is we can run another query for that user ID to get the name of the user. Or what we can do is, in our adapter, since we get the name of the user over here, we can pass in this name along with the intent, so we don't have to run a whole lot of query just to get a single name. So that is how we will avoid a whole lot of processing and networking for just a single name. So we can simply get that name over here using the get string extra, and then we can simply assign it to send to musername. That will be the name of the user. All right, so let's run our app and let's see what we get. So our app just started off. Let's open up I'm going to send it to Akshay or Sam Winchester. All right, I'm going to type in a new message, and I'm going to hit the send notification button, and here you can see that it says notification send. Let's go back to the document and let's check it in our database. So as you can see that all fields are same, and in the Sam's document what we see is another set of collection, and that is called notification. And if you tap on that, we got another document with some random ID. Now this is a single notification. Let's try to send one more notification over here, and in the app we type in some message and we hit the send button,
And if you come back over here, now in the notifications collection, we got ourselves two documents now. Both are different notifications. Now, obviously, Sam won't receive those notifications because these are still stored in our Firebase. These are not sent to any actual device. For that, we need the help of Firebase FireCloud, because without the help of Cloud Functions, we actually cannot send, or you can send it from the console, and there are several other ways, but directly sending from an Android device is right now not possible. So we will take the help of our functions feature that we have in Firebase to send the notifications to a different device, and we will be doing that in the next part. So hopefully you guys like this tutorial. If you guys really liked it, hit the like button, and you can subscribe to our channel if you are new to this channel, and you can help us by donating at the PayPal or becoming a Patreon, and our Indian viewers can use Paytm as well. Links will be in description as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Hello guys, Akshit here, and welcome back to another part of this tutorial. Now here what we are going to do is we are actually going to send the notification to the user, which we were trying to do in previous three parts. So let's get started, and before that, as always, you guys can support us at PayPal or becoming a Patreon, or for the Indian viewers you can also Paytm us. So as you can see that we got ourselves our little page open over here with the Firebase functions. So what we are actually going to do this time is we are actually going to include our functions or create the Firebase functions that will help us to send notification to the device that we actually want to. So for that, what we are going to do is, for you to use Firebase Cloud Functions, what you need is npm node.js. You need to install it in your system. So first things first, you go to npmjs.com and you install npm in your system, and it is a little lengthier process. If you don't know how to do it, you can Google it or YouTube it. There are hundreds of tutorials to how to do this, so we're not going to waste so much time on these kind of stuff. Then you run your terminal or the command prompt in Windows, and you type in this command that says npm install g is for global users, so Firebase tools. So once you type in that, hit enter, and it will install the Firebase tools for you. But since I have done all these steps already, so I don't need to redo these things. So once you do that, it will then say that the final step for Cloud Functions is initiate your project, deploy your functions, so something like that. So what we are actually going to do is, for our functions files, we are going to create a new folder. I'm going to put it on desktop. Now this folder will hold all of the function files that are actually required. Now to create those files, all you need to do is make sure that you change the location to your folder that you want to work in, which is on the desktop, and it is called Firebase push notification. Right after you do that, what we need to do is Firebase Login. So there's no dot in that. So it will then ask you to open up your browser and the CLI tools and stuff. Simply follow the steps and you will be logged in to Firebase Login. All right. So here's what I have done is I have already logged in. As you can see, the email twebprojects@gmail. Now, even if you want to, you guys, I don't check the Gmail on this account. This is just to hold the projects for the tutorials for Firebase console. So try not to send emails on this account, because I don't even open the Gmail of this account. All right. Then what we need to do is make sure that you are still in same folder, and you type in Firebase in it. As soon as you do that, it will pop out the Firebase logo over there, then a few functions or features to select from before proceeding. So in this case, we only need functions, Firebase functions. So you scroll down to that using the arrow keys, press space to select that, and hit enter to proceed. All right. So once you do that, it will then ask you to select the project. All right, which project you want. So in our console, we only have one, which is the Firebase push notification. I'm going to select that one. Then it will ask you to what kind of script do you want to use. So JavaScript is the option that we are going with, and also it will ask you to, do you want to install dependencies or not. So I'm gonna hit the Y, and that means yes, and hit enter. It will take a little bit of time to do all these things, because this is really lengthy process, and sometimes it may take up to 5 minutes or 10 minutes as well, depending on the speed of your system and internet. Now once this is done, this will say Firebase initialization complete.
Now make sure that you don't get any errors, or else you'll have to try it again. Once we are done with that, we just open up that folder. It will show us a few files, including a functions folder, so we need to open that up. And there we have the index.js file. Now this file will hold our function that we are going to work with. So I'm going to open that up in my code editor. So I am using Atom code editor over here, as it is a free tool and really good even in the design part as well. Alright, so right after that, what we are going to do is it provides us a sample function over here, which we are going to ignore and delete over here. Alright, then we need to use the use strict over here. Also we need to include the Firebase admin, because without that we won't be able to do almost none of this part over here. Alright, so you need to make sure that you also include Firebase admin over here. And if you guys want to work on the basics first of the Firebase cloud functions, you may need to first learn the basics of Node.js and then for the cloud functions. But if you are working with just the Android part, you don't want to go to the web, you don't actually have to learn all of these. Even if you just watch these tutorials, most of the part will make sense to you once you complete this. But if you actually want to go with the basics, you may need to learn Node.js first. Alright, so then what we are going to do is let's start creating our functions. So the function name will be send notification. So I'm going to type in exports.send notification, and this is going to be equal to functions.firestore.document, and here we actually need to pass in the link of that document, I mean the directory hierarchy, you can say. Alright, so currently what we want to do is in our users, if in any user document in the notifications collection, if there is any notification added, then this function should proceed. So for that, what we actually need to do is we're going to type in users slash, then for the document, since we don't know the document ID because each user is going to have a different ID, so what we are going to type in is we are going to create a variable over here which will determine which ID is changed or in which the notification is added, and we can also store that in a variable, so that will be stored over here. Then inside that there will be a collection of notifications, and lastly for the notification itself we actually need to type in like this to create a variable, so that each time a new notification is added will be stored something like in this. Now to make this work, we need to pass in the onWrite method. Now without this won't work. onWrite will actually check each time when anything is added to that location over here. So that in this case this is the notification ID. So each time there is a new notification is added to any of the users, it will this function will fire up in our Firebase console. Alright, so to make this work, you just type in event, and so inside this what we are going to do is we are going to then create two variables. One is going to be for user ID. Now since this is the user ID that we are going to retrieve from the location that we provided above, we need to type in event.params user ID, the key that we provided over the link over the location. Same thing goes for the notification ID. So that way, if any notification is added to any user, we will both know what the notification ID of that notification is, and also the user ID to whom this is added to. Then what we are going to do is we are simply going to say console.log user ID. User ID is what we wanted to display, the notification ID as well. So we will try out if this works or not. So to deploy this function, what we need to do is open up the terminal, make sure that you are still in the same folder, type in Firebase deploy, and this will take again about 2 or 3 minutes to deploy the whole function, depending on the internet speed as well. But once this is done, and this is actually a really lengthy process, I kind of think that it should be a little bit faster. I hope this will get faster with time, because when we are working with like a whole lot of code, this will get hectic to test the function again and again, because the deployment only takes like 2 to 3 minutes each time. right? So once deployed, it will show us deploy complete, and that's what we wanted. So let's go to the functions section in our Firebase console, and in the dashboard you're gonna see that our function is right over there that says send notification. So what we are going to do is we're gonna open up the logs for the function. So let's open up logs, and right now let's send a notification. So right now we don't have anything in it, but as soon as we send a notification to some user, what you are gonna see that it says billing account not configured, external network is not accessible. So that is for the free plan. This will show you the warning for the free plan, so you need to have like some upgraded plan to fully access this. But one more thing is that we got an error that says function returned undefined expected promise or value. So what this is very obvious because we forgot to initialize our admin app over there, initialize the app. So go ahead in the index.js file, add this line that says admin.initialize app functions config Firebase. All right, and then we will deploy it again 2 to 3 minutes of waiting time. This is what I was talking about. But anyways, once this is deployed, let's see what we get. So the function is deployed. Let's try to send some notification to the user, and as soon as we do that, it will then show us again the billing account warning as well, with the user ID, there itself, and the notification ID text with the notification ID itself. But right above that it says function returned undefined expected promise or value. Now this is because we are not returning any value in our function, we are just logging it to the console. So this error is very obvious. You need to actually have a return value in your function to make it fully functional. So we will do that, don't worry about that. So since we got our user ID and the notification ID, now we know to whom we want to send this notification to. But the problem here is Firebase don't send notification to a user ID. To send a notification to through Firebase, what we actually need to have either from the console, you can send it to all the devices, or you need a targeted group or a device token ID. So these are the only three options that you can send notification to. Sending to all the users is not what we actually want in this case. Also for the user group, you need to have to subscribe to a particular group and kind of something that is most probably good for a group that you want to send notification to, but not for a single person. I won't recommend you that. For a single person, the best way is to use token ID. So that is what we are going to do. So to send notification, we need token ID of each user. So what we are going to do is in our login method, I'm going to comment this send to main and the progress bar. What I'm going to do is mauth.getCurrentUser get ID token to true, and then we will add onSuccessListener, and we will inside that create a string token ID get token result get token ID. So that will get the token ID of the user. And there is something about this that I will tell you later in this part. All right, so what we are then going to do next is we are going to also have the current ID of the user. So for that, what I'm going to do is create a string current ID, and we will get it from our mauth. Also, now what we want to do is we actually want to store this token ID to the user who is logged in, obviously just logging in. So we want to store this token ID in his Firestore document. So for that we need Firestore. Let's initialize that, and what we are going to do is in Firestore collection users current ID, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new map that will be called token map, and we will put some values in that. So the token ID is going to be the token ID, obviously. So that is actually what we wanted to store inside the current user document. So we will say set token map dot add success listener and on success listener and stuff like that. You can also add on failure listener if you want, and our send to main and progress visibility will then come right after that. So once this is also done, add it to our database. So each time a user will log in, what it will do is it will store the token ID of the current device in which he is logging in to the database in the Firestore. So when we will try to send notification from FireCloud, see the cloud function, we can then retrieve the token ID of that user and we can send a notification to that device. So simple as that, but it is a little bit complicated to work with, but we will tackle it anyways. Another thing that I want to mention is yeah, let's try to run the app before doing anything else, and let's see what we get. So our app is running and I am going to try to log in some account, and this is going to be my account Akshay. And as soon as I do that, you're gonna see that it removes those field image and name, and it sets the value to token ID. It's just the token ID, nothing else. Now the problem lies here with the set value. What this actually does is it simply sets the value of the whole document to the fields that you will provide to it. So to add some data to existing one, what you actually need to do is, instead of set, you need to type in update. So if you want to add some data to some previously added fields in document, you actually need to use this update method to work with. Now let's try out again with this update function. What I am going to do is I'm going to delete the previous user, which I have done, and let's try to log in as Dean, and what you will see really soon is token ID of Dean over here. So we got our Dean's token ID stored. Let's try with Sam, and there we have it. So now the another scenario that we have over here is, say for example, if Sam logs in a device, the token ID of that device will be stored to Sam's account, and then if he logs out and if Dean logs in that account, so if someone tries to send notification to Sam, the device token ID is still stored in Sam's Firestore document, so the notification of Sam will also be received on that device, even though Dean has logged in over there. Sorry for taking the name of them, but that is how this is. So what we need to do is, when user logs out, we actually need to remove that token ID from there. So for that, what we are going to do is Firestore collection in our sign out, in our profile fragment. Right after when we sign out, what we are going to do is, for that document, we are actually going to remove the value of that token ID. So for that, I'm going to again create a new map, and this time what we are going to do is we need to pass in the same key over here that says token ID, and we will leave it blank. Now this is something new that I will tell you. So let's try to update the map with the token map remove add-on success listener, and once this is successful, then we should sign out and also send the intent to some other page. Now let's try to run the app and let's see what we get. As soon as our app starts, we try to let's go to the account page and log out. As soon as you log out, what you are going to see is that token ID is now blank. But if we did with the Firebase real-time database, if you make some value blank, the key will get deleted itself. So this is something I guess may be useful for some group of people, but if you don't want some values to be blank in your document, what you can actually do is, instead of leaving that to blank, there is new thing that you can add, which is, instead of leaving this as blank, you type in field value dot delete, and that means this current field value will be deleted from the Firebase, all right, including that field as well. So that is something new and really interesting in Firestore. All right, so next thing is, what I have done over here is, for our register activity, so you guys know that even if someone creates an account, he should also have the token ID as well, because we want to send notification to him as well, even though he has just created a new account. So for that, what we want to do is, in our register activity, we are going to include that token ID method as well over here. So each time someone creates a new account, the token ID is stored right at that time, even though if he logs out, it will get deleted, and then if he logs in again, the new token ID will be stored right over there. So this is actually how we want to have our token ID. So now back to our index file. What we are going to do is, let's remove this line, the console log line. And so what we are going to do is, using this user ID and notification ID, we will first try to retrieve the ID of person who has sent the notification, which is actually stored inside that notification. We actually stored a new field that says from, which stores the person who is sending the notification. So to retrieve that ID, what we need is a new function over here, and this will be admin Firestore collection. The collection is users doc, which represent doc over here, document over here, that is user ID, then again collection, the notifications, and the doc notification ID that we have right above it, the variable. I also tried to implement all of these in a single line, and that didn't actually work out. So I would advise you to use this type for now. Maybe they will update it really soon. Then you type in get dot then. Now this will process and get the values from that. So you actually need some results. So we will type in from, or maybe query result, and we will use that to get the results. So that will be we will create a new variable to store the from user ID, and that will be from the query result, which is the name of our return function. So query result dot data dot the name of the field, which is from. All right, it's really simple to do that. Then what we are going to do is we now have the from ID and the to ID. I mean the user who sends, we have the ID of that person, and the user who gets the notification, we got both of the IDs of the user, so we can get any data from those users. So to get data from those users, what we are going to do is we are going to create two queries over here. One is going to be from data, and this is going to be from collection users and from user ID dot get. All right, we will end it right over there. So that means we actually want to get some data from the user who has sent the notification, and also another query is going to be the to data. That means the user who will be receiving the notification, so that will be for the user ID. Now here I will show you how you can run two queries at a time instead of doing one after one. So to do that, you just type in return promise all. Now here you need to pass in both of the queries that you have created, but like an array. So to do that, you just create the square bracket, type in from data for the first query, to data second query, then for the return we type in for the results, and the results will be something like this. So from what we actually want to do is we actually want to get name of the user who sent the notification. So from name is going to be from result 0, which is actually for the first query, the from data dot data, and then you can get any field from that, which is name that we actually want to get from our Firestore. All right, same goes for the other user. Yeah, let's do the name as well, just for the sake of time, not actually time but for information. Anyways, we will get the name of the two user as well, and let's try to log them in console so that we make sure that everything works pretty fine. Let's deploy our function and let's see what we get. So our function is running now, and let's try to send some notification, and as soon as you type in, it will show you from Ella Bosack to Dean Winchester. Nice, this is working. Now let's try to send notification instead of just doing other stuff all the time. Let's send notification right now. So to send a notification, we actually need to create a payload, and this will contain the notification data. So first thing is going to be the title of the notification, which is going to be notification from name. So we will type in the name of the user who sent the notification. In the body, we actually just want the message. So for the message, which is stored in the notification ID, we can get it from right above where we got the from ID. So type in from message equals query result data, message is the name of the key. All right, as you can see right over here in the database. So for the body, we will just display the message. All right, you need to make sure that you don't include semicolon, just the commas, and lastly the icon, which is going to be default in our case, and other stuff can be included, which I will show you maybe later. All right, and then to send this notification using the payload, what we are going to do is return admin messaging send to device. Now, if you are sending to a target group, you can send to, what do you call it, group I think, or send to topic, I guess. Yeah, I'll tell you later that. So here we need to pass in two parameters. First is going to be the token ID, and then the notification itself. So token ID, we actually need to get that, and that will be stored in the to user. So for that, to token ID result 1, which is the to data for to whom we are sending notification to. Kind of confusing to say all of these things, but that is how it is. So token ID is stored in that. So we get the token ID, then we pass in the payload, which contains our notification, and lastly you just set the result. This is just to show if the function is successful or not. All right. Alright, so I deployed the function and this failed like a big time. And the reason was because of our token ID. The token ID that we are right now storing is the token ID of user data, not actually of the device of the FCM over here. So for the FCM token ID, we need to change a few stuff. Now, in the Lapid chat app, there were many of the users who were telling me, who were questioning that they are not receiving the notification. There are only a few possible outcomes when you actually are sending the notification but the user is not receiving it. First thing is, let me show you first thing is Firebase Messaging. You need to include the dependency of Firebase Messaging. Without that, this won't work. So you can do that by going to the assistant and you select cloud messaging and you can add that, but you need to make sure also the versions are all same, not different. Next thing is if your token ID is wrong, which in our case is wrong, because this token ID is, again, as I told you, is the user's token ID, not the FCM token ID which is required in our case. So for that we need to roll back a few stuff, and I'm really sorry about that because we need to roll back a few stuff. I'm going to remove the whole method of getting the token ID, so we are left with just the same old login process and nothing else. But for the string token ID, what we can do is, instead of all of these, what we can type in Firebase instance ID dot get instance get token ID. It's simple as that. We don't need to create a whole lot of method to get this token ID of FCM. We just needed a single line of code that would have worked, but since of the lack of good planning, I actually tried and thought that I would record the whole part again, but then delaying the tutorial, this part, for a whole new day. Then I thought maybe I should post it just like this. So do the same thing for the register activity. Remove the method, the whole method that we used to get the token ID of the user, and just add the new token ID using the Firebase instance ID, the FCM. And finally, let's try to run the app. So here, if you will try to run the app, all right, let's try to send a notification. So I have logged in, one as Sam, another one as Elabosec. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to send the notification in from this account, and you're gonna see that we are not actually receiving it. So the problem over here is right now we don't have the Firebase messaging services included. So that is what handles the notification when you will be receiving it on some device. But right now you can actually get the notification on device, but all you need to do is your app should be running in background or maybe closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize the app, and let's try to send notification again. So as soon as I send this notification, you're gonna see that we received that on the other phone, which is pretty nice, but we don't get the notification when the app is running. And as I told you, just like I said, we need Firebase messaging service for that. And I think this part is already extended way too lot. We should pause with sending the notification in background, and in next part what we are going to do is we're gonna see how to handle the notifications using FCM and stuff like that. We will create our own custom notifications so that you can display any kind of notifications in the mobile phone. So that was it for this part, how you can send a notification from a device to device if the app is in background. And in next part we will finish this thing off. But as I said, this was going to be a 4-part series, but this has already extended a lot, so we're gonna make it 5-part. So yeah, as always, if you guys are new, you can subscribe to our channel and hit the like button if you really liked the video. You can support us at PayPal or becoming a Patreon, or our Indian viewers can also Paytm us. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Hello guys, Akshay GH here, and welcome back to another part of Firebase push notifications over here. And so we left off with sending notifications in background in the previous part, and in this part we're going to take a look at how you can send the notification in foreground as well. So before we get started, as always, you guys can support us at PayPal or Patreon, or Indian viewers can also Paytm us, and the links will be in the description. So let's get started without wasting any time, and we got ourselves our send activity over here. And what we are actually going to do is to send notification in the foreground, what we actually need is Firebase messaging service. Now this is actually required to get the notifications in foreground. The reason here is the notification that is delivered while the app is in background or when the app is killed, the notification is sent to the system tray, and whether when the app is running, the notification is sent to the on message received method, which is in the Firebase messaging service. So we need to actually create that. So for that, I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call it Firebase messaging service. Also, you need to make sure this extends from Firebase messaging service. Then we create a method named or before that, what we actually need to do is let's go to the doc, and here you are going to see that in the Android section in setup activity, so we set up an Android client for our cloud messaging. We actually need the dependency that is already included in the previous part. Then the next step goes to adding this messaging service in the manifest file. So we copy that little code and we go to our manifest file and we paste it right over there, and you just name this class what you have just created. So you need to provide that name over here. Also, the Firebase instance ID service is also over here that you can create to get the registered token. Now here's the thing, this is a little better way to add the tokens to your server rather than adding them to the login and to the registration process. Now there are multiple ways to do stuff, as I told you before. If you are going with a little bit complicated app, then you must go with this Firebase instance ID service instead of doing them in the login and register. Since in this app we got ourselves working with that, we can use that as well. Both will work, but depending on the conditions, if you are making it complicated or a complicated app, you must use this one over here. The process is a little bit simple over here, even simpler than the login and registration. There was one method to do it, and this is the another one. So on token refresh, you can then see that including this method will just simply change or register the token in your device. I will show you this thing in some other part, or there is one more thing that I need to actually create one more part for this session. The reason is for the list that we have. I'll tell you that later. Let's get started over here. So I am going to skip this one over here. Then we have the optional stuff, the metadata and stuff like that. Let's go to our messaging service and let's include the on message received method. And in this method, what we are going to do is, in the notification we actually get a title and a body and the click action, which is not yet included, but we are going to create one. So first of all, what we are going to do is we are going to create a string. So this string is going to contain the message title. This is going from, which is we are going to receive from the remote message. So remote message dot get notification dot get title over there. Next is the body, so we include that as well, message body, remote message, get notification, get body right over there. Alright, so once we do that, the next step is we actually need to create the notification by ourselves. So we are going to require the notification builder. I'm going to go to the Android docs, and instead of typing out the whole lot of code, I'm just going to simply explain you a little bit of that. So here you can see that on this docs of developer.android.com, this is the notification builder that we require. Now once you paste in this, once you start importing this, you're going to see that the second one, the v7, is deprecated. So we need to import v4. And once you import that, the notification compat.builder says that that is deprecated as well. So the solution over here is the reason. Let's just look at the reason first instead of looking for the solution. So the reason over here is in the Android Oreo, which is the latest update. We haven't got the update yet in the Samsung devices and all, but if you are using the Google Pixel 2, you may have already got this update on that device. So here what we need to do is, in our notification compat builder, instead of just passing in the context, we also need to pass in a channel ID of the notification. So without that, this won't work for the Android Oreo. This is actually recommended. If you go to the Firebase doc section where we have the Firebase messaging services doc, here you can see that it is already provided optional from Android or 8.0 and higher. Notification channels are supported and recommended. So we need to actually have to include that if you want your app to be supported for the Android Oreo. So let's copy this metadata code, and I'm going to paste this into my manifest file. So right after that, services, we paste in that, and this string default notification channel ID. Let's create that in our strings file, and I'm going to just simply pass in a random channel ID that will be TVAC-CH. Assign any number you want. All right, 01. All right, then we can include this over here. After the context, we just type in get string, our string default notification channel ID. All right, for the icon, I'm going to use the same as our app icon. For the title, the message title, and the context, the content text, the message body. All right, after that, we actually need to show this notification instead of just building it. So what we are going to do is copy this part of code from the documentation, and this says that after the notification builder, we need the notification ID, then we need a notification manager. Also, the notification manager will then show the notification in our panel. So once you import the notification manager, we need to actually have a notification ID for each time a new notification is sent. So for that, what we are going to do is I am just simply going to use system.currenttime millis, and this is just the millisecond time of the current Android. So this will be a random ID each time when a user will receive a notification. Once you do this, this will then start working. We will start getting notification in the foreground, but there are still few things that we need to fix in our app. Let's try to run the app and let's see what we get before we even proceed with this. As you can see that we got ourselves our app working, and once we send a notification, you see that we are receiving that notification, but once you start tapping on it, nothing actually happens. The click action will work for the notifications in the background. It will send us to the app, but once the app is running, this will literally do nothing. So those things are what we have to handle over here. Even for the background, if you want to send it to some particular activity, you have to do it by yourself. Anyways, so what we are going to do is I'm going to create a new activity. I'm going to call it notifications activity. This is where we will redirect the user once he gets the notification. So for a very simple task, what we are going to do is I'm going to create a text view in that notification activity, and we are going to initialize that in the Java class. And right after that, what we are going to do is once we receive the notification, we are going to implement a click action that will redirect us to this page, and then this page will just simply show us the data of the notification or whatever data you actually want from that notification. So what we are going to do is let's start creating an intent in our Firebase messaging service. So here's the intent code that I have pasted right over here from our documentation. So this is a pending intent. What we are going to do, start importing all this stuff. Really simple, nothing much to do. Then what we do is simply for our builder, we just set the content intent to the result pending intent that we created right over here. All right, now the thing over here is we cannot pass in the context and the Java file there where we are trying to send the user to in the intent. So what we actually need to do is in our result intent, we need to pass in a click action that will be sent by the Firebase messaging service. So from the backend, obviously. So for that, what we are going to do is in our Android manifest file, in our notification activity, we are going to create an intent filter that will then have an action, and the name of the action will be some random name that you assign it right over here that does not match with any other name. So in this case, I'm just going to type in my package name and some extra addition text over here, and for the category, type in the default category. All right, right after you do that, you copy the name of your action. Let's go back to our node.js file, and in that, what we are going to do is after notification or inside the notification, we are going to add one more parameter that is going to be click action. You pass in that over here. Now what this will do is once the notification is sent, the Android application will look for the click action and it will try to match it with the file in Android manifest file. So whichever file it matches with, it will then redirect us to that page once we click on the notification. It's simple as that, but there is a little bit complication in receiving the data when the app is in background, but I'll show you right over here. So what we are going to do is we receive that click action in our Firebase messaging service, as from our remote message. So we type in get notification, get click action, and we pass in that click action in our intent. It's really simple. Then what we do is, in our notification activity, we want to send some data over there. So for that, what we are going to do is we are going to try to pass some data in the notification instead of just passing in the notification title and the body. So here I am going to add the data instead of just the notification. So we are now passing the notification as well as some data in our payload. So for that, you can create any random ID you want over here. In this case, I am going to create message. This is a random key, and the content of this will be from message, which is same as our body, but we are sending this differently from the notification. After that, I am going to create one more key, which is going to be from ID, and we will pass in the from ID over here. All right, and then we can try to receive this as data in our Firebase messaging service. So we type in remote message dot get data, and get, you pass in the name of the key over there. So getting the data over here is pretty simple as well. You can pass in any kind of data from the notification to your Android activity, which is kind of really helpful if you are trying to send users to some particular page. Then we can pass this data from the Firebase messaging service using the intent extras. So passing that is also very simple. We have done this in many similar cases, but not for the notification. So let's try to do it over here. For receiving the data, it's quite simple. Get intent, get string extra. You pass in the name of the key that you provided in the put extra, and you receive that data right over here. So what I'm going to do is mnotif data. I'm just simply going to add that data over here so that we actually see it. Let's try to run the app. All right, so here you are going to see that we actually forgot to deploy the function, so we also need to deploy that. So Firebase, I am going to redirect it to my folder, and then just simply type in Firebase deploy. You need to make sure that you are logged in your Firebase CLI over in the terminal, and we got an error. So the error over here says that unexpected token. So we actually forgot to miss a few things. First of all, in our functions file, we forgot to add that little object, the, what do you call it, right after data. All right, and we don't have actually from ID, so we need to change that from user ID, from ID to from user ID, so we get it right over here. Also, we need to change the ID over here as well. Anyways, let's try to deploy it now, and let's try to run the app. So as you can see that we received the notification, and we are receiving it in the foreground while our app is running. So let's click on the notification, and it sends us to that activity, and we got ourselves the data that is right over here. And let's go back and let's try to send that again once the app is in background. Now once we receive that notification when the app is in background, you are going to see that we get the data null. Now the thing is, let's go back to our docs, and here you are going to see that in the notification receive section, let's see right over here, it says app state, notification, data, and both. All right, so if the app state is foreground, if we send a notification, it goes to the on message received. If the app is in background, the notification goes to the system tray. Doesn't matter to us because we are sending both of the items. The data goes to on message received, whether the app is in foreground or background. So the thing is, if you are sending just the notification, the first case will apply to you. If you are sending just the data, the second case will apply to you. But if you are sending the both data at the same time, which we are doing, the foreground notification and data will go to the on message received, and the background data and notification will go to the system tray, and data will go to the intent extras, not to our own message received. All right, so how do we receive that? We just simply go to our notification activity, and what we need to do is, this is what we have over here, the keys message and the from user ID. So we just simply receive that using the get string extra from the intent. It's simple as that. The data will be received directly from the notification from the cloud. All right, so we are changing it over here, so we also need to change it in our Firebase messaging service. So if the app is in foreground, this should work as well without adding a few lines of code. So once you do that, let's run the app, and here you are gonna see that things just work pretty fine. Alright, so last thing in this part is showing the list of the notification. So as you can see that I am not going to actually show you the whole process, because this is exactly the same as showing the list of the users. The only thing that you can do is right over here, what I have done is, this is my fragment of notification fragment. Alright, so we show the list using the recycler view. I have added in that same stuff that we used to do, used in the users section, the users fragment. Just need a model class, an adapter, and same stuff. But here what I have done is, once we receive the from and the message, I try to retrieve the name and the image of the user, and if we try to run the app, you are gonna see that we got ourselves the notification. So hopefully you guys like this tutorial. We got ourselves the complete notification working, and this is exactly what we wanted, the notification to work like this. If you still want not to go in much detail, there could be like hundreds of tutorials on just the notification part, because there are a lot of things to explore in Firebase. But we are not going to waste time in going deeper and deeper, because this is what 95% of you guys want. The rest 5 may want to get into detail, but we can't go so much further without adding like 10 more tutorials to it. So yeah, I think we should pause it right over here, and we will try to cover some new stuff from the next part, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So before that, if you guys are new to this channel, you can subscribe us, and if you guys like the video, hit the like button and comment in the comment section. And you can support us at PayPal or by becoming a Patreon, and also our Indian viewers can Paytm us. So I'll see you guys in the next one.